Welcome to the Home Team, the show where no matter who you cheer for, here you're a part of the Home Team. I'm your host, Wyatt Bagnall, and today we are going to be previewing this weekend slate of games for the NFL 2024 season, Week 10. Before we jump in, hit like, hit subscribe. I would really appreciate it. It helps the channel grow. And without any further ado, let's jump in, shall we? So, I already predicted Baltimore and Cincinnati. That video is up on the channel. Go check that out. So this weekend's games, the New York Giants at the Carolina Panthers. This game is in Germany. I don't know which of us are going to be waking up early to try to watch this game. But ultimately, who do I think is going to win this game? Who do I want to win this game? Want. I guess I kind of want Carolina to win this game. Just because I feel bad when I see someone's career be completely ruined before it really ever gets the chance to start. So I wouldn't mind seeing Bryce Young play well and get Carolina a win. Do I believe that's going to happen? Man, you can throw out Europe games for the best of teams, but when it's bad teams, I sure as hell don't know. I have a gut feeling that the Giants are going to win this game. I think the Giants' defensive front, combined with Brian Daboll being a good enough coach to be able to utilize guys like Malik Neighbors, I believe that'll be enough for the Giants to get a win. This will probably be a low-scoring affair, if I had to guess, and I think that the Giants have a better chance of stopping somebody than the Panthers do, ultimately. For those of you that do decide to watch this game, I will be right there with you, and hopefully we get a good one. And if nothing else, this is a game with huge implications for the draft and the positioning there. So there's always something to take away. New England at Chicago. Okay. So the Patriots are coming off a bunch of games where Drake May is looking good, but they're sort of coming up short. Whereas the Bears are coming off some games where obviously they had the Hail Mary and then they just get blown out against Arizona. Not how you want to play if you're the Bears. Caleb Williams started the year off rough, trended up, and sort of regressed the last 2 weeks. I would argue that much of the issue with the Bears right now seems to be culture. There seems to be some guys doing some weird things in that locker room. DJ Moore's made some weird comments about if Matt Eberflus is locked to the locker room, saying, "I'd like to say no." Usually, when somebody would ask a player that question about their coach, they just say no. Hell no. Why would you ever ask it? But that's not what we're getting out of Chicago. So I think there is signs of dysfunction that scare me. However, I am not a big believer in the Patriots right now. I think Drake May is really good, actually. I mean, he showed me a lot of signs, and given the situation, it's super hopeful. But I am not, from the moment he was hired, I did not like the Gerard Mayo hiring. I think he's not the right guy to try to develop a young quarterback. And every time he goes to the microphone, he shoots himself in the foot. And I'm just not a fan of the culture of the Patriots right now either. I think the Patriots need to get a lot more on board with the idea that you have to sell out on offense to try to reach the next era of this team. And I don't know if they have the right guy to do it, and I don't know if the Bears do either. Who do I want to see win this game? As somebody who likes the Patriots, I hope that this is a really close game and that the Patriots lose it, because I want the Patriots to have as high of a draft position as humanly possible. So I want the Bears to win this game, and I do think the Bears will. I think that their defense, while they've had some rough moments against good offenses, New England is not that. And the Bears have tended to dominate those types of matchups. So I will take Chicago to win that game. And given that it's in Chicago, maybe by somewhere between 7 and 10 points. Buffalo Bills at the Indianapolis Colts. There's not a ton to break down here, people, unfortunately. Indianapolis, obviously, Anthony Richardson is not the starter. Joe Flacco will start once again. I know everybody's jumping on them after how they played last weekend, but I think that we need to show a little bit of grace and realize that Joe Flacco is a 40-year-old guy who's bounced around the league. He's not actually an elite quarterback. He's a solid backup, but oftentimes these guys are backups for a reason, and part of that is they have slumps. If he was consistently great, he never would have had to leave multiple of these locations. So I'm not sitting here panicking about Joe Flacco. However, I don't believe that this is the Colts' year. I believe that they vastly overestimated their ability. And I think that the Bills are the type of team that can expose that. I want the Bills to win this game, and I think they will. Josh Allen is not getting enough praise and enough hype as an MVP candidate. He's playing very, very well this year. And I think that the Bills are still sort of quietly, rising to the top of the NFL in a lot of ways. So give me the Bills in Indianapolis to win this game. Denver Broncos at the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this is a game that I actually think is shockingly good. I know Denver had a really rough week against the Ravens, which, hey, a lot of teams do. And that was the Ravens really firing at full capacity. However, Kansas City is not a team that fields an elite offense right now. They're a team that fields a very timely offense. They just have that gene in them to come through at the right moments. But every once in a while, a team's going to be able to stifle that, and the Broncos have as good a chance of any, given their defense, to do so. I believe that this is another game that, in many ways, the Denver defense and the Kansas City offense, we sort of know what we're going to get. Outside of an outlier game here or there from each, they've both been pretty steady. I believe the Chiefs will score somewhere in the low 20s, and the Broncos will be able to sort of limit the big plays. And then this really is going to come down to Bo Nix and that Bronco offense against Kansas City's defense. Who do I believe is going to win this game? I believe it's going to be Kansas City. However, I do believe that they're going to split the season series with Denver. I predicted that last year, and it actually happened, thank goodness. So I think Denver is actually fully capable of being a team that beats Kansas City. But the game in Kansas City, I don't know about that. So I'm rooting for the Broncos, make no mistake. I want them to beat the Chiefs, but I don't believe that they will. Not this time. Atlanta at New Orleans. This was a game that used to be important in the NFC South back in the days of Drew Brees and Matt Ryan. How times change. So, the Atlanta Falcons, they're coming in playing very well off a couple wins. The New Orleans Saints, obviously on a 7-game skid. They fired their head coach, Dennis Allen, after last weekend's game. And we are getting our first look of the interim head coach, Saints. I believe the head coach's name is Rizzi. Yeah, I believe that's it. Listen, the Saints, they were sellers at the trade deadline. They got rid of Marshawn Lattimore. There's no way Chris Olave is playing in this game. And if he is, I think that is wildly reckless. I just don't believe... If I was the Saints, I'm considering benching Derek Carr and just letting Spencer Rattler have the rest of the year and really see what you have. Derek Carr shouldn't be on this team next year. There's no reason. The Saints are going into rebuild mode, whereas Atlanta's trending the other way. So I'm going to take the Atlanta Falcons to go into New Orleans, to go into the Superdome, and beat the Saints. I want the Falcons to win this game, but I also, just for Saints fans out there, I think that this is probably a good thing. I think it's time. You can make an argument that this is actually several years overdue, that the teardown needed to happen. After Drew Brees retired and Sean Payton decided to go on sabbatical and ultimately left to be the Bronco coach, I think that the New Orleans Saints have just held on too long with this core of guys. And I'm speaking as somebody who I believe that my team, the 49ers, is currently doing that, where we may have held our guys for just a year too long. It's painful because we love a lot of these players, right? And I know that there are players in New Orleans, Cam Jordan, Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore has been there a long time as well. I believe that this is for the best and that the Saints ultimately are going to be better in the long run. I would suspect for the next 2 years probably they're going to take some time to rebuild. But the best way to get to the top, unless you get really lucky, is to be really bad for about 2 years. So as much as I want to see the Falcons win because I like to see a new team on the rise, for Saints fans, I think it's best that the Band-Aid just gets ripped off here. Up next, the San Francisco 49ers at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. San Francisco coming off a bye, going to Tampa Bay, coming off a Monday night loss to Kansas City. So in terms of prep time and rest time, San Francisco's at an advantage. Most notably, Christian McCaffrey is set to return in this game, which is huge for the 49ers. I don't know how big of a workload he'll get in his first game back, but I don't doubt that he's going to get a pretty heavy dose. As for the Buccaneers, they're obviously without Chris Godwin, and they're still without Mike Evans. That puts them at a pretty significant disadvantage against the 49er defense. However, San Francisco will be missing cornerback Travarius Ward, as unfortunately, as a lot of football fans know, his 1-year-old daughter passed away. And all the prayers and love that we can send to the Ward family at this time goes out to them. And take as much time as he should take as much time as he needs. And just know that everybody in San Francisco, and hopefully everybody around the entire league, and anybody who's a fan of this sport, can send some love his way. But in terms of actual football, they are missing a very good cornerback. This is a game that I think in many ways is going to come down to the Tampa Bay offense and the San Francisco defense. I think that San Francisco's offense is going to function quite similar to how it has all year, which is near the top of the league. Their red zone offense has been an issue. It's gotten a little bit better the last couple weeks, outside of the Kansas City game where just everybody went down, and that's me not taking anything away from the Chiefs. Kansas City fans, you guys are an awesome defense. So outside of that game, they've been doing a bit better. And then Christian McCaffrey returns, so I'm interested to see the San Francisco offense. I think it could only be better. As for the 49er defense, I have not been super inspired by their performance outside of that of Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. Both of them have still been elite and are in the top 5 at their positions this year. Fred Warner's number 1 at his. And I think that those guys are going to have big games to really do what we want to do against Tampa Bay. Run defense is going to be essential. With the Buccaneers wide receivers injured, you can't let them run the ball. You have to make those Tampa Bay receivers beat you. And to their credit, they've done a good job against the Chiefs. Tampa Bay put up a really good fight. And so that's why I don't think even when they're hurt, they should ever be overlooked. They're really tough. They're really resilient. They're really gritty, even when they're down guys. So I obviously want San Francisco to win this game, and I'm going to take them to win this game coming off their bye week and getting the rejuvenation of Christian McCaffrey coming back. However, I believe Tampa Bay is going to make this an absolute dogfight. And I'll tell all the fans in Tampa Bay, I wish you guys luck this weekend. Hope your team comes out healthy. Hope mine does too, and I hope we have a great game. But I am obviously going to take us. So, Pittsburgh at Washington. This is a very interesting game. Everybody obviously is going to be talking about Washington a ton. Rightfully so. Jaden Daniels is playing great. The Washington defense has been getting better, and they added Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline. But the Pittsburgh Steelers also represent a different kind of thing than what Washington's really faced. Pittsburgh represents ultimate organizational toughness, stability, and an understanding of how to win. The Steelers don't really get blown out, and they don't usually make the mistakes that would cost them games. We've seen Washington be pulled into close games before by the likes of the Bears, who are not at all that way. I believe that there's a very real chance that Pittsburgh could teach Washington a very important lesson about winning and about what it looks like to have a culture that sustains winning for decades. Ultimately, I'm going to say that I want Washington to win because I want them to win the NFC East. And I think that's a bit of a closer battle. But I actually think Pittsburgh is going to win. This is one where, by the way, I don't have a huge rooting interest because I'm frankly rooting for both of these teams this year. I like them both. But I have a whole lot of respect for just what the Steelers represent. And I think Washington could use a lesson in what Pittsburgh represents. And I think this is going to be a close game. I don't think Jaden Daniels is going to look bad. But I think Pittsburgh is able to make things tougher for teams than they ever expect. And I'm going to say that the Steelers are able to do the same thing to a rookie quarterback. Because that's what people still forget. He's still a rookie. And a lot of these really great coaches, they have a way of showing those guys something they haven't seen before. And Mike Tomlin's one of those guys. So I'm going to take the Steelers. Minnesota Vikings at Jacksonville Jaguars. Not much needed here, frankly. Jacksonville's not a good team. Last I saw, this is going to be Mac Jones starting this game as Trevor Lawrence is dealing with a shoulder injury. Not great. And Minnesota's coming to town. They got a win, though it wasn't quite as dominant as they would have liked. And I both want and think Minnesota is going to win this game and is going to win it comfortably. Jacksonville, I mean, listen, their defense, Josh Hines-Allen in particular, is very good. Trayvon Walker is showing flashes. It's not super consistent yet, but he's been making splash plays, which, hey, if you can just, even if you're not playing great the whole game, if you can come through and make one or two real momentum killers or game-changing plays, that's huge. So I would say right now Trayvon Walker is a more opportunistic player than he is a super consistent one, but hey, seize the moment, seize the opportunity, and if it's at the right time, you could change the game. But I'm going to take Minnesota. I have more faith in their coaching. I have more faith in their talent. I have more faith in the general operation of the Minnesota Vikings than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I suspect that by the end of the year, Jacksonville will be staring down another regime change. So up next, the Tennessee Titans at the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay. This is a game that, while I don't think the outcome is going to be something that a lot of people are surprised by, I think the way that they get there might be. Tennessee is obviously not an impressive football team, but their defense is quite underrated and very good. Obviously, Jeffrey Simmons spearheads it along the Titans' defensive line, but guys on the back end like Amani Hooker are playing very well. Amani Hooker had 2 picks last week, and while Kevin Byard was a great safety in Tennessee for a long time, for a few years there, Amani Hooker was very good as his running mate and has continued to play at that caliber in the time since Kevin Byard has left. The Chargers, on the other hand, very much like to run the ball. They are becoming better in the pass game. Justin Herbert has really settled in, and I think that once the Chargers are able to add a true high-caliber receiver, they could really take off. But for now, they're going to try to match strength with strength. Their run game, Titans' run defense. I think that eventually the Chargers will wear them down, because I don't believe the Titans' offense is going to be able to do much against the Chargers' defense that is also very good now. It's amazing what great coaching can do to a defense, right? Because it's basically the same talent, same guys, different staff, different philosophy, different approach, and the Chargers are so much more disciplined, they're so much more physical, and they haven't collapsed in the way that the Chargers always did before, and I think it's really, really great to see. As somebody that for reference, I grew up just north of Los Angeles for the first 8 years of my life. So I have a soft spot for Southern California teams, even though I root for the 49ers primarily. So I do have a soft spot for the Chargers, especially when Jim Harbaugh, who is obviously a Niner coach, is the guy who's helming this. And I'm enjoying seeing the Chargers right now a lot. And I'm rooting for them to win, and I think they will win. And I don't think we're going to see many people push back on that one. Will Levis is going to be back starting for the Tennessee Titans after a couple of weeks of Mason Rudolph there. He's incredibly volatile. If he makes a great play, he's just as likely to offset it with an absolutely numbskull play. So I just don't think the Titans are consistent enough at anything outside of their defensive effort, and eventually it's going to wear down. Philadelphia Eagles at the Dallas Cowboys. This is a game where in the preseason we all would have had this circled as okay, here we go. Big game, probably for huge NFC East implications. Now it does have huge implications for one team. Should Philadelphia lose this game, that would be pretty big. But if we were to look at trends here, we would call it unlikely. However, this needs to be said for most division games. Throw out the records. The Cowboys want to beat the Eagles. The Eagles want to beat the Cowboys. Make no mistake about it. They're going to get the best shot of both these teams, and Dallas is desperate. And you know what they say about wounded animals when they're backed into a corner? They're very, very dangerous. So Dallas could come out, hair on fire, freaking burn the boats mentality. We're leaving it all out here, and they could take one off Philadelphia. You bet your ass they could. And I'm rooting for them to do it. But I don't think they will. Philadelphia is too overall well-rounded and good. I don't doubt that Philadelphia could make this game closer than it needs to be because it's what they've sort of done all year. But I don't believe Dallas has the ability to be variable enough to do this, especially when Dak Prescott is not going to be playing. It would take a hell of an effort from the Dallas Cowboys to shock the Eagles. And I imagine that it would have to do a lot more with Philadelphia falling flat on their faces than Dallas. Now, I heard there's a chance Micah Parsons will play in this game. TBD on that one. If he does, Maybe that helps give the Dallas defense a jolt and they can come out and really try to stifle the Philadelphia offense. Maybe. But realistically, this feels like a game that Philadelphia should and will win. New York Jets at the Arizona Cardinals. Sneaky game, this one. Some of it for all the wrong reasons. The Jets are a team that, I mean, let's put it kindly here. They're erratic. They don't always do things that you would expect. But they got a win last week. And I think that, who knows, maybe it's the one you need. Speaking of inconsistency, Arizona's also been very up and down. However, they've been trending up the last couple of weeks. So, what do I think is going to happen in this showdown in the desert? Does Arizona continue their rise, or do the Jets manage to sort of quell the bleeding for another week? I want the Jets to win because, selfishly speaking, as a 49ers fan, I want some of these NFC West teams to start dropping games. But I suspect it's going to be a division that comes down to the end. But I actually think Arizona's going to win this game. I think Arizona has so much more heart than the Jets. I think that Kyler Murray is going to be able to run around and scramble. The Jets' run defense also isn't good, so Kyler Murray running is possible. James Conner is also a very underrated running back who spearheads that Arizona offense in many ways, and for the last several years has been a really strong runner for them. And I think he could really exploit the Jets' front. In terms of their pass game, while I think the Jets' secondary can theoretically match up, the Jets have a propensity to do dumb things in the secondary, ill-timed holding calls, just complete lapses in judgment outside of DJ Reed. Sauce Gardner, for the most part, has played well in his career, though he's having a year that's a bit more down than up. And I think against Marvin Harrison, that could be trouble. However, I do think DJ Reed's not the guy you can really put on Marvin Harrison because Marvin Harrison is much bigger. So I think we're going to get a premium matchup in Sauce Gardner against Marvin Harrison. And we'll just have to see who wins the matchup. This is going to take, in my opinion, to stifle the Arizona offense. It's pretty damn simple. You got to dedicate a lot to stopping the run. That can't be the thing you let beat you. And then you have to tell those corners that you've invested a lot of assets in, time to lock up, time to win this game. I mean, the Cardinals aren't particularly creative on offense. In terms of not a ton of crazy motions, not a ton of crazy formations, things like that. The Cardinals aren't one of those teams. They're a team that beats you with sheer guts. And they got a lot of it, and I don't know if that's something the Jets have. So I'm going to take the Cardinals. Sunday Night Football. The Detroit Lions go to Houston and take on the Texans. This is an exciting game, especially when you look at these two teams record-wise. You would say, wow, everybody's looking pretty good here. Obviously, the Texans are coming off a disappointing loss to the aforementioned New York Jets on last week's Thursday night game. So they have a bit of a long week preparing to play at home against the Texans or against the Lions, which I think is huge for them. Detroit's coming off a big win in Green Bay, and really the Lions are coming off several big wins where they're looking very impressive and like the best team in the NFL, or certainly among them. The Texans have a strong record. However, they are not quite playing up to it, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. The loss of Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs highlights it, no doubt about it. But really from the start of the year, the Texans' offense has been, shall we say, suspect. Not to say that they're bad, but just given the expectations for them heading into the year, we thought that they'd be a bit better. Currently, per PFF, their offense ranks 12th. So we'll see how that matches up, because ultimately, that's where it's going to be. The Lions, I get the feeling, are able to score on anybody. They're able to run the ball really well. They're able to play action pass really well. They're able to pure drop back pass really well. The Lions grade really highly on offense across the board for numerous reasons. One, they have really good skill players. Two, they have the best offensive line in the NFL. Three, Jared Goff is a really steady hand at the position and elevates them more than people understand. And four, they have one of the best offensive play callers in the entire NFL. So the Lions have everything you need to score on anybody. And probably if they don't score a lot on you, it has a lot to do with their own mistakes and getting behind the chains than it does with any specific team completely shutting them down. However, the Texans have a strong front. They're going to need Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter to tee off, which is going to be very difficult against Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell. But this is what's going to have to be done. Otherwise, the Texans are going to be in a world of trouble. But this puts a lot more on that Texans offense than C.J. Stroud. The Lions' defense is good. However, their secondary is the weakness. So, C.J. Stroud, you earned all this praise and you've done a lot of talking. This is the type of game you have to show up in. He's a great young quarterback. I think he is the type of quarterback that could bring a Super Bowl to Houston. Absolutely. This is the type of game where we find out if that's possible this year. So, I think that the Texans are going to put up a great fight, but I both want and think that the Lions are going to win this game. The Lions, they're just that team right now. They feel really, really tough to beat in pretty much every way. The only team that you could probably look at and say, oh, they're playing about at that level, you'd be talking about the Ravens, the Bills, and I'll stay Kansas City, even though I think that Kansas City can be had. Every team can be had. And I think Kansas City is one of the few teams that defensively could give Detroit everything they could handle. So I'm going to take the Lions because I just believe they're a cut above the Texans. And the Texans they're about a year, maybe 2 years away from being where the Lions are now. Monday Night Football. Oh, good. The Miami Dolphins are at the Los Angeles Rams. Record-wise, it's rough for Miami, and the Rams have surged back in the NFC West. They're a part of that big clump at the very top of it all. The Rams, ever since getting back Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and their offensive line getting back healthier, they've been able to eke out 2 wins. Not wins that are necessarily hugely impressive, but they've been able to get them done, which that matters in this league. Miami, meanwhile, after getting Tua Tagovailoa back, has had 2 very close losses. So ultimately, I think these 2 teams are actually pretty close in a lot of ways. I think that with the Rams defense being young and inexperienced, there's a chance that the Dolphins could simply have their way with that unit. They'll trick them, they'll mess with their eyes, and they'll be able to get Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle moving down the field. I also think that a guy like Jared Verse for the Rams, who I would currently have as my defensive rookie of the year, he could be a game wrecker. Not so much with the sacks. He hasn't had a lot of those, but he's been very disruptive. He's had a good amount of pressures. I watching him against Seattle last week. He made some very, very timely plays where he either got back and either hit and sacked Geno Smith, or he got close and moved him off his spot. The Dolphins' offensive line is one of their weaker elements to their team, and that is including several of their defensive groups. And I think that if Jared Verse is able to come through and have the impact that Rams fans would want, we could be looking at a tough day for the Dolphins. And I think that that's where this battle is going to be won and lost. I have a lot of faith in Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and that Rams offensive group to function against the Miami defense. What I need to see is Tua and the Miami offense be able to take advantage of the youth and inexperience of the Rams defense. And if they can, I think Miami could win this game. If they don't, I think it's Rams. So what do I ultimately think is going to happen? I want Miami to win this game. Do I think that they will? No. I haven't seen anything that I can trust with the Dolphins. Granted, they're scoring high 20s points right now. If they could just keep the Rams bogged down a bit, they could probably win this game. But I just feel like the spirit of the Dolphins is broken. And that's a team that's already sort of ready for the year to be over. I would love to see them come out and show some real fight. And I think that we're looking at a situation where if they keep losing down the stretch here with Tua back, the whole Mike McDaniel on the hot seat thing could become a lot more real than it should be. But there's something to be said for the fact that the philosophy and the approach of the Dolphins it isn't able to be sustained across multiple guys. And backup quarterback needs to be a huge, huge consideration for the Dolphins this offseason. And the fact that they're not physical enough, the fact that they don't have any other pitch to go to other than a pure fastball. They want everybody out there to be fast. Cool. But what happens when everybody's able to just keep you contained? They don't have the counter punch. They have a freaking haymaker when they land it. But all these teams are able to do, they're able to slip it, and the Dolphins just can't counter. So I'm going to take the Rams, even though I would love to see Miami get this done. As for the teams that are on a bye this week, the Cleveland Browns, the Green Bay Packers, the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Seattle Seahawks are all not playing this week. So fans of those 4 teams, kick back, relax, have a stress-free weekend. Everybody else, I hope that you all have a great weekend as well. I hope everybody's team stays happy, healthy. I hope a lot of you guys get wins. And ultimately, I hope that we all just have a great week 10, okay? So, yeah, have a great weekend. Cheers.